Good evening, guitarists. I'm the Budget King. You're my loyal subjects, and this is Guitar News for March 2025. Gift from the guitar gods, John Mayer recently made news with his comments about Universal Audio's Dumble-in-a-Box pedal, the enigmatic 82 Overdrive Special. He was quoted as saying, "I think that if you're a young guitar player, that's money well spent." And Guitar Player Online says that for guitarists restrained by tight budgets, the enigmatic 82 will let them enjoy tube amp tones, quote, on the cheap. This just in, Budget King quoted as saying, "In what boutique cork-sniffing universe is a $500 guitar pedal considered cheap? I mean, you could just buy an actual tube amp for $500, right?" Of course, the main reason for the recent real tube amp versus amp sim dust-up is the notorious Las Vegas Sphere. Fish guitarist Trey Anastasio was recently quoted as saying, "No one will ever have an amplifier on stage at the Sphere." Evidently, the venue's super ultra mega cool stereoscopic sound system is far too expensive and precise to let the concert experience be ruined by some long-haired musician playing loudly. The controversial rule applies to even the biggest bands in the world. During U2's recent shows at the Sphere, even their guitarist The Edge dropped his vintage Voxes and Fenders and used 3 of Universal Audio's amp-in-a-box pedals. When asked about the Switch, he commented, "I think they're great. They're great. They're great. You can't even really tell. Really tell. Really tell." So will John Mayer also be ditching his legendary backline of tube amps when he plays the Sphere in these upcoming Dead & Company shows? Absolutely not. He says he can't. In Guitar World, he was quoted as saying, "I grew up playing tube amps and feeling that combustion. My style of playing relies on a certain amount of pushback. I need shocks on the tires. And I think that can only come from the ignition inside of a tube." And he's also made comments about how real amplifiers, quote-unquote, move air. Tube amps are so essential to Mayer's sound that he's actually going to ridiculous lengths to use them. They may not allow amps on the stage at the Sphere, but they certainly didn't say anything about the loading docks. Yes, John Mayer has had custom wooden crate-style isolation boxes made, and he didn't stop there. Recent Guitar World pics reveal that the inside of the crates are handsomely decorated and furnished, complete with miniature furniture, lamps, rugs, and even mini blacklight posters for the walls. When asked, wouldn't it be much simpler and just makes things easier for everyone involved to just use an amp sim like every other artist that plays the Sphere? I mean, you did help Steve Jobs introduce all those amp sims on GarageBand and claimed they sounded great. He responded, "What? Like a little kid or a poor person?" In other news, Fender recently ruffled a lot of feathers by introducing their most affordable guitar line ever, the Standard Series. These are bare-bones, made-overseas versions of classic Fender models that generally start around the $600 mark. So that means you could either buy a really nice top-of-the-line Squier Classic vibe that will have all the bells, whistles, hardware, and be more vintage correct for about $450, or you can buy an affordable bottom-rung stripped-back Fender model made in the same factory on the same machines for $600. But, in all fairness, it does have the right decal on the headstock. Lastly, a Texas jury decided that the Flying V, the Explorer, and the SG are not considered to be generic guitar shapes, but that those models are still very much considered to be intellectual property and trademarks of Gibson. Gibson originally filed suit against Armadillo Music, which owns Dean, and won their case back in May of 2022, but Dean won the right to a retrial, claiming that key evidence for their case was omitted. The retrial resulted in the same verdict for a second time, and besides being hit with the cease and desist order, Dean will also have to pay a quote-unquote token sum for damages against Gibson. It's a good thing, too, since ripping off people's grandfathers is no longer a viable business plan. Of course, Gibson's sales have dipped in the wake of the PR dumpster fire that was Mark Ignacci's Play Authentic campaign, and since it's no longer the 1950s, CNC machines exist and they are no longer literally the only game in town. Also, the same company that used the iconic slogan, "Only a Gibson is good enough," Would like to remind you that most of their models are also available in the affordable Epiphone versions for about a third of the price, unless you want a Les Paul with a Gibson shaped headstock, in which case it's back to $6,000, or if you want your guitar to be smacked by a set of vintage period correct key rings by Murphy's Lab's talented technicians, which somehow results in a $10,000 plus price tag. I'm Budget King, y'all are my loyal subjects, and this has been Guitar News for March 2025. So until next time, keep it budget.